All right, perfect. Well, thank you for having me today. My name is Kaylyn Groce, and I am the Cotton and Peanut Sustainability Educator at the University of Georgia Tifton campus. I work under Dr. Wesley Porter in the Precision Ag program, and I'm also a doctoral student working on my PhD in Crop and Soil Sciences with an emphasis in sustainability. So I'm going to give you a little bit of brief background on the project that I'm currently working on. See if I can. So I'm going to give you a little overview of what I'm going to be talking about in this presentation today. I'm going to first give you some project objectives and goals, an introduction to field to market, using the Fieldprint Calculator, which is the tool that we're using to measure sustainability in this certain project, our research collection, and then what's next with our project. So first, we've all heard the phrase by now that we're going to be needing to provide food and fiber for 9 billion people by the year 2050. And because of this, we've seen an increase in agricultural production, but that has also brought an increase in environmental concerns, which has led to an overall increase in consumer demand for sustainably sourced agricultural products. And because of this need, the peanut industry is starting to take strides in bettering our sustainability and our footprint in our production practices. So because of this, we've come up with this project where our objective is to evaluate sustainability practices in peanut production in the state of Georgia and how it can vary from year to year. So I'm going to give you a brief background on Field to Market. They are the Alliance for Sustainable Agriculture. They are a group of diverse organizations that represent universities like UGA and other land-grant universities. We've got some ag businesses, grower organizations, conservation groups, and public sector partners. So Field to Market, they have this really neat tool called the Fieldprint Calculator. And the Fieldprint Calculator is a tool that we are able to use to manage farming practices from year to year. So from a research level here at UGA, we're able to manage several farms, but also individual growers can use this program to manage their farming practices. And you can see on the right, we have a spidergram graph that shows 8 different sustainability metrics. And these 8 different metrics we are able to look at once we put in information from that grower and we get these outcome scores for these metrics. And we can compare the grower score, which is in the blue you see on the graph. We can compare their scores to state benchmarks, so we can compare them to peanut growers that have information from all around the state, compare them to national benchmarks, and then specific project benchmarks, which are in the purple. And so I'm going to briefly just go over what each of these 8 sustainability metrics are. I'm not going to read them out all at once, but just to give you a little bit of an idea of what we're measuring. So we're measuring the land use. We're looking at soil conservation, as well as soil carbon, irrigation water use, energy use, greenhouse gas emissions, water quality, and biodiversity. And so our project goals, we first are wanting to create baseline data from the research that we are collecting that evaluates the environmental impact of peanuts. We're also then meeting with individual growers with their extension agents to assess current environmental and sustainability statuses to provide insight so they can improve their farm sustainability scores from year to year. And then lastly, we're really wanting to create those long-term benchmarks based on the trends that we are finding to help improve environmental impacts. So for this project, we have 45 currently enrolled peanut growers across the state of Georgia. And our growers are specifically currently in the southeast and southwest districts in Georgia. And so you can see on the right with the graph, those red dots represent the field locations of where we are collecting this data from. And I do want to note that we are adding 5 new growers each year of the project. So by the end of this year, I hope to have 50 enrolled growers. And you can see on the graph that I do have in the Southeast district, there are some blank spots, and that's where we're really trying to fill in those gaps so we get a good representative sample of our research. So for our grower meetings, I contact our county extension agents to help set up these individual meetings. And these meetings take place at a location designated by the grower or the agent. So they might happen, I put a couple examples, like a farm shop, a county extension office, and there's been some instances where I've been in a tractor with one of the growers while they've been spraying. So you never know what the opportunity will arise, but I will mention with COVID, we did have some setbacks with grower meetings, but UGA has now lifted travel restrictions, so we are able to go out, and we still meet whichever makes the grower and the agent the most comfortable. And these meetings last about an hour to an hour and a half, and they consist of two things. We go over our annual grower report, and then I also do collect that year's Fieldprint Calculator survey. So I kind of want to go over these annual reports because we found some very interesting things while providing these reports for our growers. So I do provide the metric definitions like I provided a couple slides ago. And I also provide some management practices along with those definitions that can help improve that specific score. So to give you an example, we've got soil carbon, and I provide the definition like I showed before, but for the growers, I do provide, for here, I think we have 4 management practices that kind of go along with that specific metric. And so we have increasing residues, implementing cover crops, minimizing any soil disturbance, and maybe including any type of wind barriers around your fields. So if a grower were to look at this and look at these management practices, maybe they are already implementing these management practices on their farms, or maybe they've thought about doing cover crops, but they maybe have taken that step yet, but they've been looking forward to doing that. This kind of gives them a couple of examples and showing them how they can improve their sustainability. And then I also do provide them yearly crop spidergram comparisons. So what I mean by that, typically I have, we have a 2018 and 2019 spidergram graphs here shown. So I provide them their spidergrams, and let's just say that these are the same from the same field. The grower can compare them from year to year. And so we can see that, and I don't think I mentioned this before, but on the Fieldprint Calculator spidergrams, our goal for our growers is to minimize the surface area of that blue. So the closer to the center that those blue dots are, the better. So that is our goal here. So whenever we see in 2018, this specific grower, might not have had the best land use score, but compared to 2019, that improved dramatically. And I will say, I believe this specific example was because we did have Hurricane Michael. So land use yields were a lot lower that year. So land use scores did improve in 2019 because we did not have a hurricane or a significant environmental impact. So this gives the grower a very unique opportunity to go back to their notes, go back to their records and say, well, what did I do from 2018 to 2019 to improve these scores? Or maybe what did I do that could have caused them to move backwards in a sense? So what we have learned thus far, that we have just visually going through a lot of the project scores from our different growers enrolled in our project is that we have seen that we have common metrics that can be improved upon in peanuts. So we have 4 of the 8 that I have seen that we could improve upon, and those are soil conservation, soil carbon, irrigation water use, and energy use. Now, I will note that soil carbon, as we know, is just the way that we have to work the soil to manage our peanuts. Soil carbon is going to be one of those that's not going to budge a lot. But, we're going to do our best to try to make those improvements when we can. And like I mentioned before, when I gave some of the field management practices, maybe just one of those field management practices can improve not only one metric, but maybe multiple. So maybe implementing a cover crop might improve your soil conservation score, as well as your irrigation water use score. It can improve several different factors. So the next step for this project, we are continuing grower meetings to collect 2020 peanut field information. So this year, 2021, I will be collecting 2020 data. Next year in 2022, I will collect 2021. And like I stated before, we are looking to add 5 new growers every year. And we're really wanting to start to dig deep to identify the specific trends that we are seeing in our project, so we can help our growers make the best improvements possible. And we're also working with our agents to, make those connections. So at this time, I'd like to take any questions, but first I'd like to thank Cotton Incorporated and the Georgia Peanut Commission for the support of this research. And I'd also like to thank our partners at Field to Market for their help with this research and their support. So with that, I'll take any questions.
Thanks for that presentation. We've got several minutes for questions, and there's one that's in the box. Let me read that to you. This is from Soraya Bertioli. Such an important topic. It seems to be the case that for any crop to be sustainable, it needs to produce well in a small area. Why is yield per acre not considered as one of the metrics for sustainability?
That is a very good question. I honestly don't know the answer to that question off the top of my head, but yield is a very important part in some of the metrics. Like I mentioned in land use, we do take yield into consideration. We do, especially if it's an irrigated field versus a dry land field, they do look at that. But as a specific metric itself, I don't know if I have the answer to that, but we do take yield into consideration.
Okay, thanks. There's another question that we've got. If these improvements cost money without improving yields or lower cost of production, what incentive is there for a grower to do it? So how can you create incentives if there's not a yield increase in some of those instances?
Right. I think with that question, with the growers, they're going to want to see some yield improvements. And I think it's going to be a grower by grower basis, whatever works best for their operations. I think that's going to be, what our case by case scenarios are going to look like. For incentives, I think marketability is starting to become a thing, with our, when you go to take your peanuts to a buying point. I think there is talk of starting some incentives, but, off the top of my head, I think it's just going to be a grower by grower basis, because they're going to want to make those yields. And if, implementing cover crops is going to increase their yields or increase their production in any sort of way, then I believe that that's what they would do. But a lot of the growers that I've spoke with, it's just been kind of a grower by grower basis. Some of these management practices just don't work for their operations. So I think it's just case by case.
Right. That's a good answer. Thanks. I know it's hard for us in agriculture sometimes to think of the near-term benefits and then think in the long-term if there's not some economics to help push us in that direction. So let's see. I think that might have been the last question, I think, from what I see. So thanks a lot for the presentation. We really enjoyed it. Thanks for coming today.
Thank you.